Beetlejuice? Beetlejuice.
No.
Beetlejuice. Oh, shit. What's up?
Oh, he said it 3 times.
Grapes? Oh, it's time. It's time right now. He's here. The ghost with the most is fucking back 36 years after the release of Tim Burton's 1988 cult classic masterpiece, Beetlejuice. We're here to talk about Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. I'm fucking excited, dude. I'm so fucking pumped right now to talk about this movie. And I'm like giddy, so I'm all like tearing up and shit. And I got my Fanta Haunted Apple Martini mixed with Tito's here for our fans. And I couldn't be happier about this. And those of you that have already seen our posts on social media, myself and Jeremy, you kind of probably already know where we're at with this. But those of you that don't follow us on social, well, you're in for a treat for this episode. I'm Justin.
My juice is loose.
Yeah, he's loose. All right. Yeah. What are you talking about there?
Come on, babe. I'm Jeremy.
Yeah. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Thank you very much, Warner Brothers. They had us host an amazing advanced screening for the crowd in Silver Spring, Maryland, aka a DC screening, and we had a couple awesome contest winners and a bunch of people that applied to win. So thank you to those that did participate, and to everyone that came out. It was a packed house for Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, and rightfully so. I assumed it would be. This is one of the most anticipated movies, not only of the year, Jeremy, but I think for those of us that have been waiting 36 years for it to come out.
Yeah.
So, it's insane to me. I mean, I looked over at you last night, and when you first hear that Elfman music hit, it finally hits you that, like, oh my God, this is real.
You're back.
It's for real. Like, we've seen the trailers, we've seen all the photos, we've been posting all that shit in our social media. I was on the set last year, two of the different sets, and I'll talk about that, briefly on the episode because you guys have already heard that a bunch. But now that it's finally here and you're hearing the music and you're seeing the miniatures and it all married together, and it, directed by Tim Burton, you're like, boom, Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, those credits coming up on the screen, it was just like instant goosebumps. So I think this is probably, arguably, one of the most anticipated sequels of all time, probably.
Of all time, dude, Beetlejuice is so beloved, and especially for us 80s and 90s kids, right? Like,
yeah.
It was an institution. Like, we had the cartoon show, we had the movie, we had the action figures, all of that, man. And basically, we were like, where's the sequel? Like, this is primed for a sequel. Like, it's already a franchise, and Michael Keaton's talked about it a lot, that, like, he was like, I couldn't believe the merchandising on this thing.
Dude, there's slippers, there's fucking keychains, there's air fresheners, seriously, everything, just as much as Batman or any other character. I mean, there's everything for Beetlejuice now.
It's insane. So, I mean, we almost got a Beetlejuice sequel in the 90s. Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian.
Right?
Which, I listened to a whole podcast. It's the best movies never made or something along those lines. And they did an episode where they had read the script and they review it of what we would have gotten. And it's a great podcast. You guys should check it out. The Best Movies Never Made. And I think that's the name of it. So don't kill me if I fuck that up. But dude, the Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian episode was so entertaining because they were like, yeah, it was as bad as you thought it was gonna be. Like, there's even a point where Beetlejuice is like surfing and there's like a luau, and like it basically just did not have what the first film had or had even established. So we probably dodged a bullet with that. But man, every couple years, we would get an update from Michael Keaton. An interviewer would ask him, "Hey, what's going on?" Like,
when they did Dumbo, when they did Dumbo together, mm-hmm. People asked about that. They asked about, like, are you guys going to return to another Batman? And when you look at the history of this thing, there have been numerous different writers and people attached mm-hmm. that have done their treatments to this thing. And much like Michael and Tim have said recently in press interviews, they talked about it. Then they kind of said, no, we don't really want to touch it. It's sacred. It's its own thing. Let's not fuck with it. And since then, we've had fan posters galore and rumors and people believing it's coming every year. And I have to, correct people. No, that's fake. That's a fake poster. We have Beetlejuice the musical, which is absolutely brilliant and fantastic, which adds to the lore and the myth of the character. So if you've ever had a chance to see that and it's ever in your area, definitely see that. But so the character is built itself, even from, like, for example, my daughter, she's 20 now. I showed her Beetlejuice when she was like 10. So a lot of these kids grew up with this movie, and now there's a new generation that kind of grew up on it, and like, of course they want a new Beetlejuice. We grew up on it. They grew up on it. So it's multi-generational, and it's had, these legs in terms of just being very broad and being played every Halloween on like ABC Family. And, it's a staple, dude. So it's also the movie that really showed, Tim Burton's style and his uniqueness as a filmmaker. And so I, for one, being a massive Burton guy, I mean, again, you already know this, but that's why I was so excited when I finally found out, the writers from Wednesday got their hands on it. Tim liked it, convinced Michael to do it, got everybody involved. And then, the rest is history. Now we're releasing this episode on the actual official release date of the movie. So we're going full spoilers on this thing. So if you, listen,
spoiler.
I get it. If you don't want to listen now, put it on pause, come back to it after you watch the movie. I totally get it. I would actually probably recommend it. But,
sure,
those that are
real,
go ahead,
real quick,
sure,
before you jump into that. So we talked about it. We went to the Quarry House Tavern and grabbed some wings and stuff before
our
the movie.
Favorite spot, man. Our favorite spot there, yeah.
I fucking love that place.
You
man.
love those blue,
we talked.
That blue cheese is your favorite shit in the world. You could probably just drink that every day, dude.
It's so good. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's so good. But I was talking to everybody that was there, and I'm like, this was a situation very much like an official Ghostbusters 3, where I was like, dude, I am not going to believe that this movie is truly being made until they're on set filming it and set photos come out. Then I'll believe it. And that's what happened with Ghostbusters Afterlife. I was like, once I saw set photos, I was like, holy shit, they're actually making this movie. We're getting a Ghostbusters 3. And it was the same thing for Beetlejuice 2. I was like, dude, there were so many starts and stops along the way. Like, dude, one of the writers on the film is Seth Grahame-Smith. Dude, I remember it was like 2012. It was announced Beetlejuice 2 is happening. They've even hired an official writer, Seth Grahame-Smith, and he's worked on a bunch of stuff. And I was like, man, holy shit, like, this could be happening. That was 2012 that they hired him to write Beetlejuice 2. 2012, bro. 12 years later is when we finally got it, because obviously he wrote a script and turned it in, and somewhere along the way things stalled out. Now I believe there was 3 writers on this movie. So obviously maybe they took, the basic concept, or they took elements from his script and they hired other people to come in and tweak and work on it. Either way, like, that's how long, this thing was in development hell. And maybe the holdout was Keaton or whoever. But when they officially announced that they were filming this thing, it was very much a situation where I was like, I'm not going to believe it until I see a set photo.
Yeah.
And then I'll believe it. And then we got the set photo. And
then I was on the fucking set.
Photo. Yes, you were. Yes, you were fucking amazing. But I think the first set photo was Winona Ryder, like, on set.
Yeah.
And I was like,
and
wow.
we actually were the ones to fully reveal that, Jeremy, and it went viral. And we actually got credited. I think it was actually a lot of big publications. I actually have them saved in my notepad somewhere. It got sent to me through the grapevine on a message board, and I fucking posted it, and it went huge. So, like, remember her inside the car? It was like her sitting inside the car, and just her face with the old school hair she has in the original film. And dude, it went fucking huge. I'm pretty sure we got like 70,000 likes on Twitter or some shit for that. It was absolutely wild. But we didn't take the photo. It just got sent to us. So credit to whoever did take it.
Yeah.
But someone sent it and said, hey, if you want to post this. So, but it was crazy. How amazing that feeling was, like, oh my God, it's true.
Happening.
And
happening.
Going back to, like you were saying, in 2016, Burton himself said, quote, it's something that I really would like to do under the right circumstances, but it's one of those films where it has to be right. It's not a kind of movie that cries out for a sequel. It's not Beetlejuice trilogy. So it's something that if the elements are right, because I do love the character and Michael's amazing as the character. So yeah, we'll see, but there's nothing concrete yet. And, that was almost 10 years ago. And here we are. And I'm going to mention the synopsis because I'm ready to get right into this fucking thing.
Let's do it.
After a family tragedy, 3 generations of the Dietz family return home to Winter River. Still haunted by Beetlejuice, Lydia's life is turned upside down when her teenage daughter, Astrid, played by Jenna Ortega, accidentally opens the portal up to the afterlife. And then, of course, as I always like to say on the show, hijinks ensue, and goddamn right that they do, because this movie, Jeremy, is one of the most fun times I've had at the theater in as long as I can remember, dude. What a fucking blast this was.
Dude, what's really crazy about this movie is as soon as the film starts, you're back in that universe that you haven't been in God, 36 years. And I didn't question it. It was like, yes, of course, we're back. Everything was perfect in that regard. And I don't know what it is about this movie. I didn't question anything. I wasn't dissecting anything. I literally had such a good time watching this thing that there was no, like, dude, even like watching Alien Romulus.
Right.
I love xenomorphs as much as I love Beetlejuice, man. Might be a little more of a fanboy on one more than the other. However, I love them both. But with Alien, I'm like watching it through a lens of like, please don't fuck it up. Please don't fuck it up. There was never a point while watching Beetlejuice where I had any apprehension or like, oh man, I don't know, or like, oh man, I hope they stick the landing. I hope they nail the finale. Like, I never questioned it, man. I just was in it and enjoyed it, and it was just such a great experience from beginning till end, dude. Like, it is hilarious and adorable. Like, the movie was adorable as well. Like, it
absolutely.
It was so charming in a way that I haven't seen or felt in a movie in a very, 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 very long time. I mean, like, dude, the use of practical effects.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude,
I mean, mind-bogglingly amazing.
You guys know that, like, that's one of my big things is I'm like, dude, it's the Ian Malcolm factor from Jurassic Park is, you were so, consumed with whether or not you could that you didn't stop and think of whether or not you should. And that's like how I feel about CGI in modern movies. It's like, yes, you can do it. You do have that capability, but is it what the film needs?
And right? I will say this though, not to cut you off, because this was a thing that was mentioned by a lot of outlets early on based on comments made by Tim Burton and Michael Keaton that there was no CG. There's CG in the movie. There's absolutely CG in the movie, but it's used so minimally that it's we see stop motion in the movie and we see puppets and we see guys in costumes,
miniatures, yeah,
and miniatures, and the movie opens with miniatures married with actual footage, just like the original. And I think that's what just kicks you right into it immediately. You're like, there it is. That's what we want. And I would dare say that this movie has more practical effects in it than I would maybe even like the newer Star Wars movies where they were trying really hard to put a lot of practical
100%.
Effects,
yeah, 100%.
That was part of the deal between Tim and Michael. And I think Michael Keaton actually pushed this even further, was like, it needs to feel handmade. Those were his words. I want it to feel handmade. It can't be too effects driven. It needs to feel like the original did, because that movie,
Mhm.
if you watch the original in 4K, you can see like strings pulling things and shit. It's wonky, it's cheap, and that's the whole charm to that movie. So they tried to recapture that, and I for one, I feel like that maybe I could speak for you. I'm sure you agree. Maybe you don't, but
Sure.
it felt the same that they were able to
It did.
recapture that.
It did. And they nailed the aesthetic of, okay, if it can be done practically, let's do it practically. Whether that is stop motion, whether that is miniatures, whether that's, latex masks or XYZ. Like, dude, even, I'm gonna, again, this is a spoiler filled episode, so we're going in. Like, so when we have Beetlejuice's wife that she's sucking the souls out of these ghosts, it shrinks them and they become like miniatures, but like, dude, they're like latex masks and like rubber hands that they
Shitty
become.
latex masks almost.
Dude, but it looks
It
amazing.
does.
Like,
It
so
does.
good. Any other movie, dude, shooting now, all of that would have been 100% CGI. All of it. And the fact that it wasn't, that it was like just rubber masks and rubber hands with like a smoke effect.
I
Like,
mean,
dude, come on, man. It's fucking perfect, dude. Like, stop doing things in post production when you're making these movies. It's just as cost effective most of the time to do them practically rather than on the back end in post production. Do your shit practically, man. That's why, going back to Alien Romulus, dude, that's what he did. What Fede Alvarez did in Alien Romulus is almost everything that could be practical was practical.
yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
I mean, and Tim's always been a practical guy, and I want to be clear on this. He is absolutely in my top 5 favorite directors. Anyone that knows me or listens to this show already knows that. There's a whole reason why both times I visited, the sets to this movie, that I drove all the way there from fucking Virginia overnight, got zero sleep, and the rest is history.
Where do they film again?
Well, they filmed in, let me try to find the location. So it's Winter River, Connecticut, but it's in Vermont where they shot the Winter River stuff.
Vermont. Okay.
Yeah. And then of course the other stuff which they married to that, which made it seem like it was also Winter River, was right outside of Salem. And it's interesting because I was on both sets, and in the original Beetlejuice, it looks like such a small town, like there's nothing else connected to it. But in the movie, they kind of connect the two places, which was very interesting, especially going to both locations and being able to witness them. Now, the first location, the Winter River location, when I got there, they had finished shooting like 2 days before that because it was right before the writer's strike. But they were able to go there and finish everything that they needed before the strike happened. So they didn't have to go back there. So I got to see the town completely put together exactly as you see it in the movie. Halloween decorations, because one of those moments in the movie, a very integral part of the movie in terms of a key part of the plot, takes place on Halloween night. Got to see all the Halloween stuff. And then, of course, looters started coming to the set and stealing shit. I took like a leaf off the ground or something. I wasn't going to be that guy, but I do know some people that came much later on when they were tearing the buildings down and got some pieces of shit that were cool. But, when they started shooting again after the strike, that's when I traveled to this little town outside of Salem and got to watch them film, got to see Tim Burton directing, got to be part of the opening cast and crew meeting, got to see Jenna Ortega and the whole deal. So, and of course, our listeners know I ended up meeting Tim Burton that evening, a dream come true for me. But seeing those locations in the movie, they nailed being able to marry those two locations together as all being Winter River, Connecticut. I love seeing that. It was just like, I've been in a couple little small movies, and I was in Creed 2, which was just like, on a soundstage or whatever. But actually seeing like physical locations and then being like, oh, I was there for that. Like, it's just wild to me. Especially a movie that's a sequel to one of my favorite movies of all time, surreal. But moving forward, because I'll just talk about
but like,
the
dude,
whole time.
but before we move forward, man, like that was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I'm so stoked that you went and you got to have that experience, because this movie is going to live on forever, for an eternity. Like, it's always going to exist from this moment forward, and like you got to go there and be in that town and like be on those sets, and like, dude, Beetlejuice fans all over the world would kill for that experience, and I'm so stoked that you got that.
Well, you were absolutely part of the decision-making process. I remember calling you and being like, what do you think, man? I have to drive like, I think it was like 12 hours or some shit. And you were like, dude, why wouldn't you? You have to.
So, I'm a bad fucking influence, man. I'm not the one. Like, I am not the one to tell you not to buy the thing. Like, I'm not the one that's going to tell you not to go and do the thing. Like, Danny's listening to this, and she's like, fucking hate him. I hate him. I'm a bad influence.
For those of you out there that want to check those episodes out that go super in depth on those set visits, there are episodes that go totally in depth on that are Patreon exclusive. So for as low as $1, check them out. You can go listen to those. They go super in depth. They're like an hour long each, and they totally go in like, you know, the ins and outs about those trips. So, but I think going into this movie, my biggest worry isn't Winona Ryder returning as Lydia Dietz. It is not Catherine O'Hara returning. It's, does the juice still got it? You know, is the juice going to get loose? Is Michael Keaton going to be as totally insane and wild and playful as he was in the original? And I'm sure you can answer that question for me right now.
Yes, he was everything and more that we could have ever wanted for him returning to this character. I mean, like, dude, the original Beetlejuice, I think Keaton got like what, 12 minutes of screen time as Beetlejuice? Like,
it's under 15. I know that it's under 15 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's around 12 minutes or so. But I mean, like, you know, this is one of those, you can't put the genie in the bottle. Like, people are showing up for Beetlejuice, you know, they want Beetlejuice. We waited 36 years. You can't only give us Beetlejuice for 15 minutes again. And let me tell you what, not only is Beetlejuice the star of this movie, but he is the star of this movie in every single way. He eats up the scenery in every single scene that he's in. He has one-liners, not like annoyingly either, because like one-liners can be like, you know, used in a negative connotation from time to time. Like, I'm talking about very quotable lines that were not heavy-handed or force-fed, but were very organic to the story and to the character, that just worked so well. I laughed so hard.
Dude, the whole crowd, the entire crowd was laughing from start to finish in this movie.
Like, man, you know, as a fan and lover of these now two films and this universe, like, it just makes me go, I just immediately want more. Like, I'm like, just go ahead and greenlight a third movie. Just go ahead and just go make it. Like, just go make it. However, you know, not to go off on a side tangent here, but if you put both of those movies together, it says Beetlejuice 3 times. So I'm like, could this be it for the juice?
Well, I mean,
that's a question that I pose.
That was a question that was asked to Tim Burton at the London premiere, and his answer was, well, it took me 36 years to make a sequel, so by the time we get around to a third, I'll be over 100. And then he just shook his head no. But this movie right now is set to make a record box office opening for September, and it's also set to be one of the biggest openings of 2024, rightfully so. Warner Brothers knew this, and they've had some failings along the way this year so far. We don't know if Joker 2 is going to be anywhere near the level of the first one, considering the reactions we've seen today. But there's always that intrigue from people. And then there's always those people that won't go see a movie if there's bad reviews. But as of right now, we're sitting here. This movie is at 81% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, which, Jeremy, strangely enough, is the same fresh rating for the original Beetlejuice on Rotten Tomatoes. And the amount of reviews is, you know, off by maybe 20 or so, but the majority of people are enjoying this. I've seen a handful of people that it didn't work for them, but so in terms of story, you know, because you know, I could keep going on forever about how great Keaton is. I mean, he literally stepped back into that striped suit with the black eyes, and I mean, dude, he's in his 70s. When he made that movie, it was 37 years ago. in 1988 when they filmed it, or actually 87 rather, because it came out in 88. So, I mean, but it's almost like he never like lost a step, dude. If anything, he had more energy now, I feel like, because he felt like he had to do it because he didn't want to let anyone down. And his performance is flawless, absolutely flawless. And Tim here, the reason why this movie works for me, you know, I think is down to the point that it's been a long time since Tim Burton has been Tim Burton. Not since like 2012's Frankenweenie has he done something that really seemed like it was really his thing, where he got to play around with the themes that he loved to play with and have a lot of fun with it and just go balls to the wall. He hasn't let himself loose. I keep saying, you know, the juice is loose, but that is absolutely a theme here for them just going, hey, if we're going to make this thing, no holds barred, let's fucking do it. And the other part to that is that they don't hold back at all on Beetlejuice being politically incorrect. I mean, he's still horny. He's still all about the same shit he was all about in the original. I wouldn't say he is at all up to modern standards. He is just Beetlejuice. You know, I mean, if you've ever seen the musical, that version is way more raunchy. But I mean, for a PG-13 rating, I think they go as far as they could possibly go. They don't dumb it down. They don't water it down. They don't neuter it, which if they had done that, it would have just ruined the entire point of the character. And there have been some people, which I will not name on the show, a few critics here and there that are like, this movie's woke, or, you know, Beetlejuice is a woman hater or a creep. And I'm like, did you not watch the original that he's trying to marry a child?
This planet.
He's trying to marry a child in that movie.
I fucking hate people, man.
No, I know.
Like,
absolutely,
Jesus
dude.
Christ. It's like you saw that in that movie because that's what you sought.
Because that's what you wanted to see. Yeah. And people can find anything they want in a movie, but I feel like specifically here, I'm like, this is, I mean, if anything, it's still a extremely family safe movie. And it's just Tim Burton pulling out all the toys out of his box and just playing with them and having a great time with animated creatures, claymation style sequences, you know, dreams upon dreams, amazing musical numbers, which we'll get to, of course. And then some pretty deranged shit as well, that at the end, which we were all pretty shocked by. But, you know, to kind of jump off from the beginning of the movie, you know, Lydia now is a widowed medium. She's in her 40s, which, I mean, I can totally relate to that shit. She lives in New York City, and she has a TV series called Ghost House with Lydia Deetz. And it's hilarious to me because this is exactly the kind of thing that Tim Burton loves, is even though she is a true medium, like those fakey fakes from the 80s that used to do television shows and, you know, like the psychics back in the 90s, like Miss Cleo and all that shit. It's not really
Call me now.
Call me now. But so, and then she has this boyfriend named Rory, played by Justin Theroux, who kind of is the Otho, you know, if you remember him from the original. He's kind of like that guy in this movie, who's her producer and love interest. And of course, we have Astrid, played by massive star Jenna Ortega, who plays her daughter, who has her in her phone as, what is it? It doesn't even have her name. It says something like, not estranged mother, but like, it's, God damn it, I can't remember what it says, but supposed mother or something, supposed parent.
Yes.
It's something like hilarious like that. And then, of course, Delia Deetz, who I have to bring up immediately, that outside of Michael Keaton in this movie is my favorite fucking part of this movie, who plays a multimedia gallery artist and influencer, which to me makes perfect sense considering who she was in the first movie. She's pretentious as fuck. She's still the same character, just aged. But dude, I'm just telling you, I think they nailed the writing for her, because every time she had a quip or a one-liner, our crowd like went fucking wild. I know I did. I was absolutely enjoying the shit out of that. But here's where we have to get to the rough stuff. Everybody knew from the trailer, if you paid attention, that Mr. Deetz, Jeffrey Jones' character, was not going to be in the movie. He's gone and dead, and we know the reasoning for that. He's not a good guy in real life, and we're not going to dig up that grave on the episode. But so Charles, gets eaten by a fucking shark in stop motion animation.
Dude, that stop motion animation was beautiful.
It was amazing. And it looked just like Jeffrey Jones, though, so they didn't try to pretend. It still looked just like him. So he dies, gets literally bit in half by a fucking shark, and that's the entire reasoning why they all have to go back to Winter River, because they're going to have the funeral, and that's how they get the family back together again. Because it seems like they're not estranged, but they're not like totally a unit as a family anymore. Minus the connection that Astrid has with her grandfather. She mentions like he was the only normal one of the bunch out of all of you, and she seems to deeply hate her mother because her father passed away, and they haven't had a good relationship since. She does not believe in ghosts, so this kind of leads to. We've seen Jenna Ortega play these kinds of characters before with Wednesday. Her character in the Scream movies is very similar. She's kind of angsty. She's kind of angry and pissed off. But I think it works really well here. I think under Burton's direction and with the chemistry between herself and Winona Ryder and Catherine O'Hara, I think it's a perfect team. I don't know if you agree or not.
No, I think it's damn near perfect for sure. This is just a personal thing. I don't particularly think Winona Ryder has ever been a great actress. I think she's serviceable, and I think that she has been in some really iconic, great films while also not being fantastic in them. Like, and I know that that's like a thing that people may not like saying, but it's like, yeah, dude. But I mean, like, I look at like Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it's like, dude, she's really bad in that movie. And then like there's points in even Stranger Things where I'm like, she's just not very good. I mean, dude, I could keep going. Like,
you're
Mr.
not the only one that
even
talked about that, man. You're not the. There's episodes that we talked about that. Absolutely.
Oh, and then there's like even a couple lines in this movie that I'm like, man, like I don't know, like I just feel like she's not great. She's serviceable, so like she gets it done. Everything is conveyed that her character's supposed to convey, but even still, like there's one point in the movie where she's supposed to be having a heartfelt conversation with Astrid, her daughter, and she says the line, "Death is hard." And then Jenna Ortega Astrid goes, "Sometimes I think living is harder." And it's the way she delivers the line that she's like, "Death is hard." Like, it's just like,
you just sounded just like her. So now you have to be our resident Winona Ryder, just like Brady's our resident long legs.
Death is hard. Like, it was just the way that she delivers the line that I'm like, still not a great actress, not a bad actress per se. Sometimes bad delivery, but if there was going to be a weak link in the film, for me it would be her, because I feel like she's always just serviceable. She's never great.
I can't totally agree with you. I can't. I think
she's fuck me.
Well, do you really want to? Are you asking?
I mean, what did you recently say you wanted to spread your ass cheeks and fuck you? What was it? Long legs?
Well, that and another movie recently, but I absolutely let Beetlejuice fuck me when I watched it last night. Yeah, it was like, dude, I'm calling his name 3 times right the fuck right now. I'm ready for
right
it.
now.
That rotted.
I've got the turkey gravy ready, boy.
300-year-old. No, all right, not gonna go there. Sorry, a little bit too politically incorrect for our listeners now. But I don't disagree with you. EFG has a history with Winona Ryder, and even when we did, I think the last season,
he's fine.
You and I, yeah. But my key thing is Winona is absolutely back as being Lydia and perfectly there. Like, so she's doing a new,
sure.
And this character is dealing with her own shit with being on this show she doesn't want to be on, this new boyfriend, which she doesn't really seem to like all that much, even though she says it in the movie, and she's got a drug problem. And she's got a drug problem because after all this time, she's starting to now have visions of Beetlejuice popping back up. So I love this. I love that the movie doesn't just give you Beetlejuice randomly in a scene, but they, throughout the opening of this movie, she starts seeing anyone with stripes on and having these glimpses of him as if he's haunting her.
But he really is, though,
he is.
Which is funny.
We later on find out that he is actually doing this because he calls her the love of his life, and he's got a picture of her, when she's still a teenager on his desk. I mean, motherfucker, how's anyone gonna be pissed about, like, well, he's pervy in this movie? I'm like, he was pervy in the first movie. That's the fucking point. He's a perv. Why wouldn't he be? Is he gonna just change now and not be? Anyways, I digress there. So they get there back to Winter River, and come to find out in the afterlife, Beetlejuice's ex-wife, who is referenced with, the ring on the finger in the original, is put back together. Now, I say put back together because, Jeremy, this is one of the most entertaining, visually stunning scenes in the entire movie. We have back, spoiler alert, none other than Danny DeVito. Now, if you watch the trailers, you already fucking knew he was in the movie. But, dude, I'm telling you right now, you didn't see my face, I'm sure, but how excited I was when he did a penguin reference. He's like, "Arr, arr, arr," and he's got the fucking black ooze coming out of his mouth the entire time. He's just cleaning up in the afterlife. He's just basically a janitor there, stuck in purgatory. Yeah. And randomly, lightning strikes through, and the Beetlejuice's ex-wife, Dolores, is brought back to life in true Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas fashion. Her whole body gets put together, she staples herself together in a super entertaining scene, and then she's back. Now, I will say, before we go any further on the review, if I had any issue with the movie, it's that, this is always a Tim Burton thing. He decides to cast people in roles because he just wants them in the movie. He did it in Batman Returns with Christopher Walken. He's done it a million times over the years. I'm pretty sure he just had a meeting with Monica Bellucci, and then he's like, yeah, I'm going to cast you in this movie. And that's what he did, and now he's with her. And of course, rightfully so, she's absolutely, dude, she's a thing of beauty in this movie and in real life. They're together now, and she's in this movie. So this isn't the first time he did this. He did this with Ed Wood too. So yeah. You do the math, but
I think that in the original shooting script, that her character Dolores had a much larger part and much more screen time, and I think it's even possible that they filmed a ton more with her. And then I think what ended up happening with her character is somewhere along the way they were like, hey, this thing's 2 hours long. Like, do we need a 2-hour long Beetlejuice movie? And I think decisions were made to trim some fat, and they found ways to lessen her role.
That's true.
The character's role in the movie.
And I'll bring this up because the movie's now only like an hour and 40 some minutes. Now, I can say this now because the movie is out, that a good friend of the show, a good friend that maybe you just did a guest podcast with a couple weeks ago, saw the movie and did not reveal any spoilers, so they didn't break any embargo or whatever they signed, but they just mentioned that the movie was like over 2 hours. And then it was through rumors and people mentioning it to me that they had cut it down by half an hour. So you're absolutely correct. I guarantee you that there's probably more to this. And when it came down to the cutting room floor, it could have been Tim. It could have been Warner Brothers going, hey, more screenings per day. But it sounds like, based on what I've been told and what I've heard, that they kind of left him alone on this one because he was so pissed at Warner's for so long. That was probably the only part of the contract where it was like, you can't bother me. And it was said that there was no executives or producers that were bothering him. They just let him make the movie. But I totally agree. So what we get out of Dolores is some really like visually interesting scenes. She's a badass. She's a soul sucking demon, who married the juice as he called himself back in the 14th century, when he was robbing graves. And this is an interesting scene that Tim does. He brings out his internal Mario Bava, and we get a scene shot on film in black and white, in which I didn't expect to see. We actually see Beetlejuice's origins and who he was before he became Beetlejuice. What did you think of that?
I loved it, man. I loved it. I thought it was a super funny and entertaining scene, and it was just visually just breathtaking. I also wasn't expecting to see a human, era Beetlejuice, so that was great.
He still looked like Beetlejuice, which is cool, but absolutely stunning sequence. And knowing Burton's style, I was like, man, this is so great. You can tell he's having fun with this, because once he's throwing in this in there, it's very clear that he's just like, fuck it, I'm going to do whatever I want with this. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really just going to go all the way and do this thing. So from there, obviously, the movie pushes forward, and she's less of a character or plot element, for Burton in this movie, but the movie moves on to this love story, kind of, between Astrid. So after the funeral of her grandfather, she goes riding her bike. And that's some of those scenes I was there for when they shot those. And she comes upon this boy with this amazing Tim Burton design treehouse. They connect, and they're starting to see each other more and more often, which then eventually leads to some, pretty crazy shit. There's an element there that we didn't totally expect when you're going into the movie in the beginning of this thing. And then, during the funeral, Justin Theroux's character is like, yeah, I'm going to ask you to marry me. And I think it's pretty clear right from the get-go this guy's a slime ball. I don't think there's...
Big time.
He's never, no one's ever trying. Justin's not trying in his performance, and Tim's not trying in his direction to lead you to believe he's a good guy. It's just literally, this guy's a slime ball. He's a producer, which again harkens back to the original Arthos character. But so he asks her to marry him. He's putting her on the spot. She says yes. It's very clear that Astrid and Delia are like, fuck that shit. And
yeah,
in and out of this, we get to see Beetlejuice interacting with his team of shrunken heads.
Oh my
and
God.
It's time to talk about the show stealer, aside from Beetlejuice. Bob.
We're about to get a ton. We're about to get a ton of merchandise, man, because in the way that people took to Daryl Dixon from The Walking Dead, in the way that people took to Eddie Munson from Stranger Things, in the way that people took to Grogu from The Mandalorian. Get ready, motherfuckers, because it is Bob's time to shine. The merchandising is going to be huge. Absolutely a crowd favorite. I mean, and that's another reason why I think they knew that they had something with him, which is why he's so prominently used and utilized.
The whole tour they've done, with the Bob and the other Beetlejuice workers, where they're out in their yellow suits and people are taking pictures of them. They've done a tour the whole lead up to the movie. We had one in DC. I didn't make it, unfortunately. Yeah, they did one in DC. I wanted to go to meet Bob, but there's already a Halloween costume, Jeremy. It's already at Spirit, dude, of Bob. So
no shit.
Yeah, Bob's gonna be a big thing. I mean, actually, I'd love a Bob action figure. I'll wear a shirt with Bob on it. I'm like, and here's the thing, much to what you were just saying. Danielle was reaching over to me during the movie going, Bob is so cute. I love Bob. And I'm like, there it is. Mm-hmm. There's the reason for him. I mean, he's put into some pretty extreme situations, but one of the funniest is when Beetlejuice finds out, because there's this investigation, Willem Dafoe's character comes out and he's questioning Beetlejuice. He's, this old, he was this B-movie actor, Wolf Jackson. So he's now a ghost detective in real life. He was a B-movie action star. When they're actually doing investigations in the netherworld, and he finds out that, hey, you might be in danger. Beetlejuice dresses Bob up like him with the striped suit with the green hair. He's like, hey, Bob.
As a decoy.
He's like, anytime you see anything going on, you just stand in front of me. Everything good. It'll be good. You just step right in front of me, and So all that shtick, with Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice talking to the Bob character is gold. Like anytime you see him, it's just you're like super happy to see him. You're like, oh, more Bob, awesome.
Yes, absolute scene stealer for sure. Like again, bring me the Bob merchandise. I want it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, dude. I think it's also a thing. And some people might complain like this is the Baby Yoda or the Grogu effect, where it's like, or I would even dare say going before that, like the Minion effect, where like every movie needs like a cute thing. But I'm like, dude, basically it's the same shrunken head dude from the original. It's the same design. He's just wearing a different outfit in the movie, and Beetlejuice has like a team of them working for him in his agency. So whatever, who gives a shit? It makes the movie super entertaining and fun. So
it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's so much fun. So much fun.
So,
dude, I knew with the Jeremy character and Astrid.
You knew. You knew.
Dude, instantaneously, I was
okay,
like,
so you can mention it. So she goes over there. She meets him in the treehouse. He invites her in. You don't actually see her parents' faces. They're just like his mom is cooking. Faces, his dad is just watching TV, and they go upstairs, and he's got like a super rad '90s vinyl collection of music and shit. So you knew.
Dude, instantly, the moment they introduced him, I was like, okay, so here's a Ghostbusters Frozen Empire plot device where there's a ghost that this character doesn't initially know is a ghost, or the ghost is going to want or need something from a living person. Like, I instantly knew it. And he was like, hey, do you want to come back tomorrow? Like, I'll be waiting here. I was like, oh, because he's like the same way that the Maitlands were tethered to that house in the original film. I was like, this dude, the reason he's like, hey, come back here, I'll be right here waiting. I was like, he's tethered to that location. I knew instantly.
And before we get to this plot point in the movie, I did forget to mention this, and it has to be mentioned. The first time we see Beetlejuice actually being full Beetlejuice on with the living. And that's when, Astrid's up in the attic. She sees the model for the first time that the Maitlands made. The Maitlands get like one line of dialogue, and that's it. We were already told that through the grapevine Gina didn't want to come back. We don't know if that's the actual reason.
They mentioned them twice. They mentioned them twice because they mentioned that they found a loophole in the contract, which means they were able to pass on and carry over. And then later on, they mentioned
which sounds like a plot hole
with the model set.
But it's also funny though. But Rory's character is up there. He sees the flyer and he's like, fuck this. I'm just going to say the thing 3 times, even though, Lydia says not to. And then they have to have like a couple session therapy thing. And when Beetlejuice, he's like, it's time to spill your guts. And he just opens up his chest and all those fucking slimy, like slithering fucking creepy worms all over the place. He does the face gag, that whole thing. Luckily, Lydia knows the home signal so she can get back home. But that sequence, again, that was when I was like, okay, we're here. Keaton's on point. Like the rest of the movie is going to be perfect. And then it's, leading up to this wedding they're supposed to have on Halloween when this boy invites her on Halloween night, like you said, and brings her into the house. Now, again, this whole movie, Astrid's like, I don't believe in ghosts, thinks her mom's a fraud, hates her for it, thinks she's just doing it for the money, has never believed any of her stories. This kid gets her up there and is like, hey, I just want to hang out here upstairs instead of doing the trick-or-treating thing. And they end up just basically her finding out, like, I'm a ghost and I need your help. And he seems like this super nice kid. And he makes this deal with her that, like, yo, if you go into the afterlife with me, you'll get to see your dad. And this is something that we see with the Astrid character is very important to her. She misses her dad. It was like her best friend. There's a lot of dialogue that relates to that. They go into the afterlife. And then, at that point, Lydia finds out about it through her cousin. What is she going to do? Who else is she going to call? Not the Ghostbusters, but the ghost with the most.
Did you say through her cousin?
Yeah, isn't that her cousin? The realtor?
What is it? Is that
Yeah,
like a deep
that's her
cut from the?
cousin. It's not the
She
mom.
was the little girl
She's
from
that,
the
yeah,
original
dude.
Grown Up.
That's right. That's the little girl, and then they have her daughter.
I didn't know that they were. I didn't know that they were related.
Oh, hold on. Okay, so it's the cousin of the Maitlands, then, right? Isn't that correct? Because in the opening of the original, we're going off on a tangent here. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the Maitlands family that are the realtors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I misspoke, but it's the family that is still alive that were, the daughter that's in the original. She's now the realtor that's trying to sell the house in this movie, and Lydia's actually brought her on to do that. They're having a conversation, and that's when she mentions, like, oh, that house that you dropped Astrid off at, yeah, like that kid like murdered his parents, and then when he got caught, broke his neck. So revelation to the crowd, and then of course Lydia drives there as soon as she can, and Astrid's already in the afterlife, so she has to ask Beetlejuice for help. And I think it was a very clever way to bring them together, because obviously up until this point in the movie, she's trying to get rid of him. Like, he's fucking haunting her, and she's seeing visions, and she's like, this is ruining my life. I'm on medication over this. Then she brings him in. And you and I talked about this via text a little earlier. This is where the movie actually, knowingly or maybe unknowingly, because I don't think Tim Burton ever watched the cartoon, but it feels kind of like the cartoon, doesn't it?
Maybe Tim Burton didn't, but you got to think, man, Tim Burton didn't write this shit.
It's true.
Like,
it's true.
3 other people did, and I guarantee you Seth Grahame-Smith watched that Beetlejuice cartoon growing up, man. So that's where, when they team up, especially with how fantastical the afterlife is, the netherworld is, dude, straight up out of the cartoon, man. Like, from the moment that they team up in this movie and then they go into the netherworld together, it 100% felt like the cartoon. And let me tell you what, brother. Let me tell you what, brother. I was here for it. Like, I was having peak fun when Lydia had no choice but to conjure Beetlejuice and team up with him. Like, I'm like, dude, I couldn't love this thing anymore. Like, I couldn't, man. It was so amazing. And then, like, dude, looking at everything in the netherworld, all the practical,
every detail,
monsters,
every set,
effects, every single set. God bless him, man. God bless everybody that made this movie into a reality.
Yeah, I mean, it looked gorgeous. Every color scheme that we saw in the original, it's back. That bisexual lighting throughout the blues, the greens, the yellows, everything is there, and every character looks perfectly designed as their own unique thing. Like, no one fucked around here. Like, this thing was so carefully made to be as unique as they would expect a new Tim Burton Beetlejuice movie to be in 2024. So I mean, I was taken aback. I was just like, man, this is one of those movies that I could just sit back and look at and just be in wonder of. That's always been Burton. It really has, but it flourishes here. And I think he hasn't had this much fun, like I said earlier, with anything in a long time, because he went for it. He was like, fuck it, I'm going to make this thing go all the way. You know what I mean? So from here on out, like, it's Lydia in the afterlife trying to find Astrid. In the meantime, Delia buys these, they're called asps, right? Asps. They're these snakes, and she wants to do this influencer video, basically like showing how she's feeling about Charles's death. And she claims to Astrid earlier on, like, no, there's no poison in these. I made sure I paid extra. Then she gets bit and she dies. She goes to the afterlife, and then she's in the waiting room. She's in the same waiting room that we did, by the way, see Beetlejuice still waiting in earlier in the movie. So we do get to see him still waiting for his number to be called earlier in the movie. He's still sitting. He goes back to sit on that couch. apparently you're allowed to get up and leave and do something. I don't know if that made any sense to you, but um, again, so she's there, everyone's there, and Astrid ends up seeing her dad, and he, this boyfriend character utilizes Astrid and basically saying, like, you signed a thing and now I get to keep your life and I get to get out of here. And in the process, there's a chase sequence, there's a whole musical sequence during this Soul Train, and it's really entertaining and just gorgeous to watch. And then this is where I started to get, my heart tingling a little bit, where the Astrid character and, of course, Lydia are starting to connect. She's like, oh, my mom came in for me. And now she knows that the afterlife is real and ghosts are real. And then they get to reconnect with her dad, but not before they end up having to go into a sandworm pit as they're trying to escape, because the afterlife police are after them. And this is one of the most exciting, entertaining stop motion sequences of the entire movie. It's everything you would hope for and more. And I mean, I was just like, yes, total fan moment. The movie's not without its fan service, but I think at the same time, it's never so concerned with it that it becomes a fan service situation like most legacy sequels, because Tim himself said, I never rewatched the first one before I did this. It's been many years since I've watched it. So I think he was just going from memory and trying to capture the spirit, I don't know. Did you feel like it was ever too super over the top fan servicey?
No, because there's a difference. Like, when I think of fan service, right? I think of an Alien Romulus. I keep bringing that up because it's such a
Sure.
comparable thing, because they're both like long running films that have huge fan bases. In Alien Romulus, they literally were repeating lines from movies that you're quoting an Aliens quote, where this movie is supposed to take place. Romulus is supposed to take place before Aliens, so like that's fan service. Things like that are fan service. But Tim Burton created a universe, a world in the original Beetlejuice, and a lot of rules and things were set up in that movie with how does the afterlife work? What are these sandworms? Why do they exist? Like, how does one, get interactions with them? All these things, to where I don't think by bringing the sandworms back, they had to be there. That was something that was already established, that if you didn't bring that back, it'd be like having a Batman movie with no Batmobile. It's like, well, wait a minute, where'd the Batmobile
I was going to say it's like having a Star Wars movie without lightsabers.
Absolutely. So, like, you had to have some things from the original, and I don't think that's fan service. I think that was established and created as part of that world in that original film. So, of course, you have to have them in this follow-up, for sure.
Yeah. Now, moving forward quickly here, the whole part of the deal was that Beetlejuice would help Lydia, but she had to sign a thing saying that, yeah, you're probably going to be my wife. That's what I'm looking forward to for 36 years. So that's what she signs on to do.
You do that really well.
I've been doing it for a long time, man. I mean, it's just this one thing that pops up randomly at a bar, and people are like, Beetlejuice? Just because that voice.
Your green hair.
Well, I only did the green hair because our good friend of the show, Maurice Roy, mentioned to me that I can't have blue hair at this thing. My regular hair is usually green. So he's like, dude, you have to do the green. And of course, our good friend Corey, who listens to the show, was like, you got to paint your face too. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'll do the green hair though. But, so, from this point on, Beetlejuice serves his purpose, and Astrid's boyfriend, who basically thinks he's out of this, he's like, yeah, I'm going back to the real world. You're fucked. You're staying here. And then he's about to get his ticket stamped, and then it's Beetlejuice. And then doesn't he stamp shit out of luck on it?
Yeah.
And then he goes to hell.
And then he goes, I think he says, get lost, fucker.
Yeah, he does. That's the only F word in the movie, isn't it? I'm pretty sure it is.
What's funny is I think with PG-13, you get one F word.
Yeah.
And there's another point in the movie where Beetlejuice goes, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, and they
But
bleep
they
it.
literally
They bleep
beep
it.
it.
Yeah. Well, because in the
Which
original,
was hilarious.
he gets nice fucking model. You know.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely. They probably just used it there, and it was great. So from here, Astrid's father and so he eventually gets them out of there. But then Beetlejuice is like, you still got to marry me. So they find their way out. They're back into the real world. And here's the wedding sequence, which is, for me, probably my favorite sequence of the whole fucking movie.
What a grand finale, man. What a grand
Absolutely.
finale. We had a hilarious musical number that I was not expecting. If you would have told me prior to seeing this movie, like, hey, by the way, there's like this really long musical number. I think the song was about a cake too. Like, I'll never make that cake again. Like, if you would have told me that ahead of time, I would have been like, I don't know how this is gonna work. And let me tell you what, man, not only does it work, but it works gangbusters. That shit is so funny. It's so on point. It makes for so much eye candy and hilarious hijinks from all of the characters in the scene. It looked like everybody was having a blast, like filming that scene too. And we're getting peak Beetlejuice here, where I mean, like, he's singing this song, and I mean, there's even a point where he's crying, and like his black eye makeup is like running down his face.
Yeah, it was great.
Oh my god, I laughed so hard.
It's true. And here, of course, is where we see a scene where we at Epic Film Guys reveal the set photo, and we got banned from social media for a while, but it's where Beetlejuice, who's like obviously fucking with this Rory character, shoots truth serum into his neck, and then he starts telling the truth to Lydia that, I don't really love you. I knew I'd make more money off you as your husband and not just your producer. And then he gets his ass tossed across the church. Great fucking sequence there. Beetlejuice is still trying to marry Lydia. It does not end up happening. But I will say this much, ladies and gentlemen. So we've gone through this whole movie here for you. I don't want to spoil the ultimate finale of this thing for you. You're like, what the fuck, dude? You just spoiled the whole movie for me. But in terms of this church sequence, I kind of got to leave that alone. But things come together. It's super entertaining. And you're going to walk away feeling like, dude, what more could have come from that? That's a fucking blast of a time. Now, the movie does end, and it has kind of a fake out sequence where, like, you know, it's not going to end that way, right, Jeremy? I'm sure we all were, yeah, this.
Oh, for sure.
It's fun.
I was like, this is a dream sequence.
It's super silly. You're like, no, it's not going to end that way. But we do have to mention Beetlejuice Baby, because it's one of the best practical effects of the whole movie, and the movie's got some serious gore, which the original film didn't really have, really at all. I mean, this movie we see, stop motion shark eat Charles Dietz in half, and he's got blood squirting everywhere. We see his, the corpse of Charles walking around, and he's just got like that little hole with the blood squirting, like a practical effect would look like, with even the white cap. You see that squirting it, so it looks cheap and dumb on purpose. When Delia meets him in the afterlife and stuff at the end. But the baby, dude, causes some serious damage, and there's a lot of bloodshed. I was like, whoa. I mean, it obviously, it's 2024 now. I mean, you get away with a little bit more gore than you probably could in 1988 for the gore, but I think I was super over the top happy about that.
It was
almost
hilarious and terrifying at the same time, this Beetlejuice Baby. Like, weird.
Yeah.
I loved it though.
Yeah. It's probably one of my favorite moments of the entire movie. But overall, it's very clear here where we walked out of this movie, how we walked out of this movie, what we felt. I mean, dude, all around, just, I turned to you and said this. It's not perfect, right? There's some stuff that, here and there I could have done without, or, bump this up here, change this there. But I just had the most fun with this thing. I feel like 36 years later, like, what more could you ask for? And someone actually commented, I believe it's my friend Paul from the Countdown. He said, this didn't work for me. I'm glad it worked for you. And I said, I'm glad it worked for me. I had a Beetlejuice checklist for what I hoped for, out of a sequel 36 years out of the original. And all of those boxes were checked. Think about it logically. Awesome visuals, practical effects, all the returning actors, top notch. Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice, like in full form, even probably, I would even dare say maybe even better than he was in the original.
100%.
One thing that needs to be mentioned, Danny Elfman's score. I mean, Elfman came back. He did a brand new score. There's lots of new themes. He redid old themes. So, I mean, dude, I'm happy. So it's time for final thoughts on Trash It or Treasure. I'm going to start with you, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is not something that I watched and had any qualms with. Like, literally, I accepted everything that this movie offered for what it was, and I didn't leave disappointed or feeling like, like, I didn't care for this, or I wish they would have done this, or like, this part could have been better, or this. Like, I literally was just along for the ride, and I had such a good time at the movies. And I could not have asked for a better sequel, honestly, to Beetlejuice. Like, I don't know if it would have been possible to do a better sequel than this. Like, legitimately. Like, I think that this thing is perfect. And if this is the last time that we get a Tim Burton, Michael Keaton Beetlejuice movie, what a high note to go out on. Of course, as a fanboy, we always want more. So if they made a third one, man, I'm there. Opening day, I'm 100% there. But I treasure this movie because I think it's literally perfect.
Dude, I mean, we never thought, like you said earlier in the show, you, I, and hundreds of thousands of other fans across the world never thought this would be a possibility. It sounded like they would just humor it. They'd mention talking about it, and that we would think about it, and we got it. And when you think about the sequels we've gotten to movies, 10 years after, 15 years after, 20 years after, this is the rare one, much like even Blade Runner 2049, where it's coming like 30 plus years later. And those usually either do really well and become like an amazing cult classic to a new audience, or they just fail miserably and no one ever talks about them again. And this is one of those that's going to stick with people. I think it's going to stick with the new audience that fell in love with Beetlejuice recently as a child or a teenager. Their parents showed it to them. And then the people that, showed their children that movie. And I couldn't be happier. I'm super on a high with this movie, and super appreciate all the people that have supported us on social media in terms of like sharing our thoughts and all the images and everything. It's just been a great build up for me as a fan, just like Jeremy this year with Romulus. I'm a huge fan of Alien as well, but that's like his shit, right? And Burton and Keaton getting back together for something as monumental as a new Beetlejuice is just like, whispering in my ear, we all know he's not going to do another Batman. So listen, I want him to do it too. It's never fucking happening. This is just basically the closest thing we're going to get to them ever getting back to that peak Keaton, Burton. And so I'm so head over heels and happy about it. That's it for this full spoiler episode of Epic Film Guys, our review of Beetlejuice. Let us know, let us know what you think about the movie in the comment section of wherever you're seeing this post. And of course, reach out, message us, whatever you feel like doing. If you think we're wrong or right, we love hearing from you guys. If you're new to the show, thanks for listening. And if you're a long-time veteran listener, we love you so much. Thanks for sticking with the Epic Film Guys. We're all over social media at Epic Film Guys on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You name it, all over the place and on every podcast platform. And once again, thank you to all those that came out to our sponsored screening of Beetlejuice last night in Silver Spring. You're the best. But until next time, I would dare say, Jeremy, this is probably the movie to watch this Halloween season. Great family flick. I mean, we'll see what happens in October, but I think this might be the one. What do you think?
Dude, go and see this movie. Go and see this movie. Well, obviously, if you've made it this far, fuck, I hope you already have seen it because we just spoiled the shit out of it. So go and see it again and again because the movie is that great. It's that charming. I loved it, and I think that it's really going to resonate with fans. So you should go see it many, 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 many times.
I totally agree. So to end shit up, I'm Justin.
I'm Jeremy.
Hey, and as I always like to say, hey baby, baby, keep it creepy. Yeah.